Seahawks at Bengals. Kickoff Sunday, October 15th, 1 p.m. Eastern. Over-under 45. Game overview by Hilo. We don't have an injury report from the Seahawks coming off their bye, but it appears as if DK Metcalf did not practice on Monday when the team returned to the field. Quarterback Geno Smith was forced from the team's Week 4 win over the Giants with a knee injury, but appears set to play against the Bengals. The biggest injury concerns from Seattle are in their secondary and along their offensive line. Expect updates later in the week. Geno Smith ranks dead last in attempted air yards per pass attempt this season, likely attributable to an offensive line struggling through injuries and allowing pressure at the second highest rate in the league. Kenneth Walker gets the best matchup on the ground of the young season against a Bengals defense allowing 1.62 yards before contact per carry, 30th in the league. T. Higgins is an interesting case study in pain management, as his rib injury is highly unlikely to get worse by playing, but is equally as likely to be extremely painful whenever he is touched in the torso. That said, the team did not send him to injured reserve, keeping the possibility of him being active on game day open. Is Joe Burrow now fully healthy? There is no way of knowing for sure, but the Cincinnati signal caller remained exclusively in the gun against the Cardinals, but he did demonstrate a little more escapability and mobility when under pressure. How Seattle will try to win. The best way to describe the way the Seahawks try to win games is to relate them to a battering ram. They are going to run their offense their way, which typically involves elevated rush rates, moderate pace of play, and controlled game environments with an emphasis on execution. The primary focus of their offense in game environments they can control is to chip away at their opponent, which then opens up downfield passing as a result. That said, one of the bigger changes this season when compared to past offenses is their willingness to open up the aggression should the game environment call for it, utilizing pace, 7th ranked 27.7 seconds per play, and above average pass rates, an 8th ranked pass rate over expectation as needed. This is evident by looking at their game logs. With just 55 offensive plays run from scrimmage in their lone convincing win, 24-3 in Week 4 over the Giants, and an average of 66 offensive plays run from scrimmage between a 13-30 loss to the Rams in Week 1, 51 offensive plays, a 37-31 overtime win against the Lions in Week 2, 72 offensive plays, and a 37-27 shootout win against the Panthers in Week 3, 75 offensive plays. Even so, expect the game plan to involve elevated rush rates to begin and play-action passing built around that, with the understanding that the offense is now willing to alter course in the second half this season should the game environment call for it. Running back Kenneth Walker has been held to lead back status as opposed to workhorse status, which makes sense considering previous coach tendencies amongst offensive coordinator Shane Waldron and head coach Pete Carroll. His 59.7% snap rate ranks 16th in the league, and his 67.3% opportunity share ranks 14th. Furthermore, and in true Seattle fashion, Walker has been in a route at a low 30.2% clip, relegating him to yardage and touchdown status. His 4.38 speed will always lend itself to explosive plays and breakaway runs, of which he already has 4 through 4 games, meaning the ceiling is most certainly still there. He also holds the most evaded tackles in the league while playing 4 games, compared to 5 for most other backs. The Seattle offensive line has been a relative hindrance, generating just 1.21 yards before contact per attempt. That has left the bulk of the onus on Walker to generate on his own, which he largely has done to this point in the season. That said, he now gets a matchup with a Bengals defensive front, allowing the 3rd most yards before contact at 1.62 and the 3rd most yards per carry at 5.3. This is a good spot on paper for Walker to get going. Backing up Walker as the strict change of pace back is rookie Zach Charbonnet, who has been between 24 and 26% snap rates in 3 of 4 games this season. DJ Dallas is head-scratchingly still a part of the offense, primarily reserved for clear passing situations and the 2-minute offense. Finally, Walker has 5 rushing scores across the Seahawks' 3 wins compared to 0 in their only loss, meaning Walker likely goes as the offense goes moving forward. The offense utilizes extreme rates of 12 personnel in game environments they are able to control, departing only from that setup in their Week 1 loss to the Rams. They have averaged a 49.33% 12 personnel rate in their 3 games since Week 2, which had the largest impact on rookie wide receiver Jackson Smith-Njigba's snap rate to date. Alpha wide receiver DK Metcalf has played just 71% of the team's offensive snaps over the previous 2 games, which could be related to a rib injury he picked up in the team's Week 2 overtime win over the Lions. Tyler Lockett has also seen his snap rates drop during the previous 2 games, averaging just 75% of the team's offensive snaps during that stretch. JSN appears to remain capped at 60% of the offensive snaps, again, attributable to the team's elevated 12 personnel rates. The dip in snap rates for Lockett and Metcalf have directly benefited undrafted free agent Jake Bobo, who has averaged just under 40% of the team's offensive snaps during the most recent two-game stretch. In his 2022 career resurgence year, Geno Smith held respectable marks in intended air yards per pass attempt, 7.6, and completed air yards per pass attempt, 4.4, but has struggled to begin the 2023 season, league-worst 6.2 intended air yards per pass attempt, and a 22nd ranked 3.6 completed air yards per pass attempt. That dip is likely attributable to a 31st ranked pressure rate allowed from the offensive line that continues to struggle through injury. A matchup with a Bengals defense generating pressure at a below average 21.7% clip could allow Geno to attack more aggressively downfield. How Cincinnati will try to win. I have no clue how this team is trying to win games anymore. I got extremely excited after seeing head coach Zach Taylor actively scheme Jamar Chase touches to try and exploit too high in Week 3. I hyped them up in Week 4, only for them to completely go away from that game plan. So I preached caution in Week 5, with the team coming in at extreme ownership, only for them to revert back to doing some forward-leaning stuff on offense against the Cardinals, and for Chase to break the slate, whom I completely faded and contributed to my now famous screenshot on Twitter of a full 150 rosters not cashing a cent. I would like to think Taylor has metaphorically seen the light after trading good and bad performances over the previous 3 games, but we can't say with any degree of certainty that those tendencies will continue forward, considering his robust history of struggling to exploit too high and cover 3 looks, which the Seahawks are going to play a lot of. On the top level, the Bengals are running a moderately paced offense, 16th ranked 28.7 seconds per play, with extreme pass-heavy tendencies, 5th ranked pass rate over expectation, and a robust 39.6 pass attempts per game, the latter of which ranks 4th in the league. In what has now become an all-too-familiar setup, Joe Mixon maintains a stranglehold on the backfield opportunities for the Bengals, but has struggled through poor efficiency and horrid metrics in the red zone. His 84.7% opportunity share ranks 4th in the league, and he remains involved in the pass game with 17 targets through 5 games. That said, his true yards per carry ranks 29th at 4.1. He has evaded only 8 tackles this season, putting him 32nd. He has just 1 breakaway run, good for 29th, and he continues to get stifled near the goal line. 10 red zone opportunities and just 1 touchdown, including 2 more goal line opportunities stuffed in Week 5. The Bengals are blocking to just 1.36 yards before contact, and the Seahawks have allowed just 1.17 yards before contact through 5 weeks. They're 5th best in the league. That's what we've come to expect from Mixon and this Bengals offense. Even so, and as we saw last season, Mixon's role is likely to lead to a blow-up game or 2 this season. On paper, this shouldn't be one of those instances. Trevion Williams maintains his role as primary change of pace back, but has not played more than 16 offensive snaps in any game this year. Jamar Chase truly is unguardable. He managed a whopping 19 targets in Week 5, 15 of which he was deemed open or wide open by PFF. Taylor also returned to heavy rates of pre-snap motion for Chase, heavy rates of slot utilization, and heavy rates of quick hits designed to get Chase the ball in space in Week 5. Whether or not those tendencies from Taylor continue into Week 6 is the biggest question here, not whether or not Chase can win in any matchup. The heavy rates of cover 2, cover 3, and 2 high tendencies from the Seahawks defense would theoretically lend itself to a similar game plan from Taylor regarding Chase's utilization, but again, we can't be certain considering a rather robust history of failed game plans during Taylor's tenure in Cincinnati. Chase is a boss. His offensive play caller and head coach has been slow to adjust to a changing defensive landscape around the league. As we discussed leading into Week 5, slot man Tyler Boyd's role was highly unlikely to grow in the absence of T. Higgins, and we saw that play out in the team's win over the Cardinals. Trenton Irwin stepped into a 76% snap rate on the perimeter and saw a massive 10 targets, catching 8 of them for 60 yards and dwarfing Boyd's 7 targets and 39 yards. Irwin should be considered the semi-direct replacement for Higgins should the latter be unable to play through a painful rib injury against the Seahawks. Finally, tight end Irv Smith has not been a large part of the offense in his first year with the team, ranking near the bottom of the league in yards per route run through 3 healthy games. Expect Drew Sample and Mitchell Wilcox to remain involved, albeit in more robust blocking roles. The big picture is this offense is heavily based on 11 personnel, and should continue to feed the players that can win themselves, because Taylor has been inconsistent in designing an offense to exploit the defensive tendencies of his opponents. Likeliest game flow. There are multiple aspects of this game that contribute to a rather wide range of potential outcomes as far as the game environment goes. First, the Jekyll and Hyde nature of the Cincinnati offense that has been introduced via sporadic play calling tendencies makes their offensive success largely dependent on how head coach Zach Taylor calls the game. Second, the Seahawks have largely been unable to fully control game environments as they would otherwise like outside of their Week 4 win over the Giants. Third, the Bengals defense has not been able to generate much pressure on opposing quarterbacks, which has been one of the largest shortcomings of the Seattle offensive line. And finally, injury uncertainty surrounding T. Higgins, Joe Burrow, DK Metcalf, the Seattle offensive line, and the Seattle secondary could shift the dynamics of this matchup as the week progresses. As things currently stand, we should be viewing this spot as we typically do when we encounter a game with a wide range of outcomes. Look to be underweighted ownership and look to be overweight if the pieces are largely going overlooked. Although not exponentially more likely than other outcomes present here, a game environment where the Seahawks are able to control the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball is slightly more likely, making Kenneth Walker the most intriguing piece on paper.